Chapter 15. Nearing the End. The Bible Sabbath hit the headlines in New York City not too long ago. The following article appeared in the New York Times on March 14, 1966. The title in bold type said this: "An appeal to the Pope of Rome to lead Christians back to the Bible." Dr. Ernest R. Palen, pastor of New York's Marble Collegiate Church for more than 30 years, created a stir that hit the headlines when, on March 13, 1966, he delivered a sermon in which he called for Protestants and Roman Catholics to join in returning to the Bible Sabbath that Jesus kept on Saturday. This Reformed church in America, theologian and pastor, startled hearers by quoting from Exodus 28 and then saying, "It should not be too great a break for us to observe the same Sabbath day that Jesus himself observed." In this sermon, he pled for all the churches to return to the keeping of the seventh-day Sabbath, and noting that mankind can only truly keep holy that day which the God of heaven has commanded to be kept holy, he said that this one day of the week really kept holy by Catholics, Protestants, and Jews would give an uplift to the moral tone of our day that nothing else could do. Dr. Palen, recognizing the well-known leadership of the Pope in Sunday sanctification, asked that Pope Paul VI take the initiative in this matter. Dr. Palen predicted that if the pontiff would designate the seventh day, the historical and biblical Sabbath, as the day to keep holy, that most of the major Protestant bodies of our time would go along. Article by George Dugan. Christians urged to join Jews in observing Saturday Sabbath. New York Times, March 14, 1966. Palen was correct in saying that mankind can only truly keep holy that day, which the God of heaven has commanded to be kept holy. The Ten Commandments, given by God to Moses, is to be the great pattern for our lives. Through the grace of Jesus Christ, we can be empowered to do all that he asks of us in the Bible. The purpose of Christianity is to bring people back to God and enable them to obey him. "Till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law." Matthew 5:18. The law of God is both a revelation of his will and a transcript of his character. Both God and his moral law will endure forever. Never has one command been annulled. Not a single part has been changed. The Bible says, "Forever, O Lord, thy word is settled in heaven." Psalm 119:89. All his commandments are sure. They stand fast forever and ever. Psalm 111:7-8. And in the very heart of the Ten Commandments is the fourth, as it was first proclaimed by God on Mount Sinai. "Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor, and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and hallowed it." Exodus 28:11. You and I may, in the past, have ignorantly broken the commandment. But now he wants us to return to it. Whatever God commands, we can do, for all his commands are enablings. The God of heaven loves us so much that he let his Son go to Calvary for our sakes. Christ died so that sin could be taken out of the lives of all who yield themselves to him and, in his strength, obey his will. You and I want to do what God says. We want this with all our heart. We can do nothing better than to show him our loyalty by letting him fulfill his will in our lives. Whatever he says in his word, we want to do. Throughout this book, we have been looking at the past. Now we shall view the present and the future. In the 6th century BC, the prophet Daniel was shown in vision that a terrible organization was later to arise that would seek to destroy God's people and his law. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. Daniel 7:25. But a parallel warning is to be found in Revelation 14. In this chapter, we find a threefold warning to be given to all the world in the last days. Revelation 14:6-12. And it comes just before the second coming of Christ, Revelation 14:14. Indeed, that message will prepare those who accept it to meet their Creator in peace when he returns. Under the figure of 3 angels flying in mid-heaven, this important message is revealed. By the first angel of Revelation 14:6-7, men are called upon to fear God and give glory to him, and to worship him as the Creator of the heavens and the earth. In order to do this, they must obey his law. This is a Bible truth that needs to be understood by everyone today. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Ecclesiastes 12:13. Without obedience to his commandments, no worship can be pleasing to God. This is the love of God, that we keep his commandments. 1 John 5:3. He that turneth away his ear from hearing the law, even his prayer shall be abomination. Proverbs 28:9. The duty to worship God is based upon the fact that he is the Creator. We owe our existence to him. Therefore, he deserves our worship and our obedience. To worship anything else is to make it an idol. All the gods of the nations are idols, but the Lord made the heavens. Psalm 96:5. O come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. Psalm 95:6. Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for thou hast created all things. Revelation 4:11. There is no fact more obvious than that we worship God because he is our Creator, and because he is our Creator, we must obey him. In Revelation 14, men are called upon to worship the Creator, and this prophecy reveals that those who genuinely do so will be those who keep his commandments. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Revelation 14:9-10-12. In contrast to those who will receive the mark are those who choose to obey God's commandments. One of these commandments, the fourth, points directly to God as the Creator. Exodus 28:11. Obeying it identifies us as his people. It is a sign, that ye may know that I am the Lord your God. Ezekiel 20:20. It identifies him as our Creator. It is a sign, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the 7th day he rested and was refreshed. Exodus 31:17. The importance of the Sabbath as a memorial of creation is that it keeps ever present the true reason why worship is due to God. The Sabbath, therefore, lies at the very foundation of divine worship, for it teaches this great truth in the most impressive manner, and no other institution does this. John N. Andrews, History of the Sabbath, page 515. It was to keep this truth ever before the minds of men that God instituted the Sabbath in Eden, and so long as the fact that he is our Creator continues to be a reason why we should worship him, so long will the Sabbath continue as its sign and memorial. The keeping of the Sabbath will ever be a sign of loyalty to the true God. So the message of the first angel of Revelation 14 is a call to return to the worship of the Creator. And without a full obedience, we cannot genuinely worship Him as He desires. Revelation 14, 6-7. The third angel commands us to keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus. Revelation 14:12. And it tells us that those who refuse will receive the mark of the beast. Revelation 14:9-11. What do these symbols mean? What is the beast, the image, and the mark? The line of prophecy in which these symbols are found begins with Revelation 12, with the dragon that sought to destroy Christ at His birth. The dragon is said to be Satan. Revelation 12:9. For he it was that urged men to put the Savior to death. But the chief agent of Satan in making war upon Christ and His people during the first centuries of the Christian era was the Roman Empire, in which paganism was the prevailing religion. Thus, while the dragon primarily represents Satan, it is, in a secondary sense, a symbol of pagan Rome. In Revelation 13:1-10 is described another beast, like unto a leopard, to which the dragon gave his power and his seat and great authority. Revelation 13:11. Down through history, most Protestants have recognized that this power is the papacy, an organization which succeeded to the power and seat and authority once held by the ancient Roman Empire. Of this leopard-like beast it is declared, "There was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme His name, and His tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds, and tongues, and nations." Revelation 13:5-7. This prophecy, which is nearly identical with the description of the little horn of Daniel 7, unquestionably points to the papacy. Power was given unto him to continue 42 months. Revelation 13:5. And, says the prophet, "I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death." Revelation 13:3. "He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword." Revelation 13:10. The 42 months are the same as the time and times and the dividing of time, 3 years and a half, or 1,260 days, years, of Daniel 7:25 and Revelation 12:6. This was the time during which the papal power would so greatly oppress the people of God. This time span began with the supremacy of the papacy in AD 538 and terminated in 1798. At that time, the Pope was made captive by the French army. The papal power received its deadly wound, and the prediction was fulfilled. "He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity." At this point in the chapter, another symbol is introduced. Says the prophet, "I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb." Revelation 13:11. Both the appearance of this beast and the manner of its rise indicate that the nation which it represents is unlike those presented under the preceding symbols. The great kingdoms that have ruled the world were presented to the prophet Daniel as beasts of prey, rising when the 4 winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea. Daniel 7:2. In Revelation 17:15, an angel explained that waters represent peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. Winds are a symbol of strife. The 4 winds of heaven striving upon the great sea represent the terrible scenes of conquest and revolution by which the kingdoms have attained to power. But the beast with lamb-like horns was seen coming up out of the earth. Revelation 13:11. Instead of overthrowing other powers to establish itself, the nation thus represented must arise in territory previously unoccupied and grow up gradually and peacefully. It could not arise among the crowded and struggling nationalities of the Old World. It had to come up in the West. What nation of the New World was, in 1798, rising into power, giving promise of strength and greatness and attracting the attention of the world? One nation, and only one, meets the specifications of this prophecy: the United States of America. But the beast with lamb-like horns spake as a dragon, and he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword, and did live. Revelation 13:12, 14. The lamb-like horns and the later dragon voice are in strong contrast. This plainly foretells an eventual development of the spirit of intolerance and persecution that was manifested by the nations represented by the dragon and the leopard-like beast. And the statement that the beast with two horns causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast indicates that the authority of this nation is to be exercised in enforcing some observance, which shall be an act of homage to the papacy. Yet such action would be directly contrary to the principles of this government, to the genius of its free institutions, to the direct and solemn avowals of the Declaration of Independence, and to the Constitution. The founders of the nation wisely sought to guard against the employment of secular power on the part of the Church, with its inevitable result, intolerance and persecution. The Constitution provides that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, and that no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office of public trust under the United States. Only in flagrant violation of these safeguards to the nation's liberty can any religious observance be enforced by civil power. And an image of the first beast is to be made by this power, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast. Revelation 13:14. They, the legislative power, rests with the people in this lamb-like beast. But what is the image to the beast, and how is it to be formed? This image, made by the two-horned beast, is an image to the first beast. It is also called an image of that beast. To understand what the image is like, we must study the characteristics of the first beast, the papacy. When the early church became corrupted by departing from the simplicity of the gospel and accepting heathen rites and customs, she lost the spirit and power of God. And then, in order to control the consciences of the people, she sought the support of secular governments. The result was the papacy. In the papacy, we find a church that, for over 1,000 years, controlled the power of the state and employed it to further its own ends, especially for the punishment of heresy, and brought darkness and misery to people everywhere. In order for the image to be formed, the religious power must so control the civil government that the authority of the state will also be used by the Church to enforce specific religious observances. In centuries past, whenever the Church has obtained secular power, she has employed it to punish dissent from her doctrines. Rome did it for hundreds of years. Protestant churches in Europe and England did it for lengthy periods of time also. For example, during the 16th and 17th centuries, thousands of nonconformist ministers were forced to leave their churches, and many, both of pastors and people, were subjected to fine, imprisonment, torture, and martyrdom. It was apostasy that led the early church to seek the aid of the civil government, and this prepared the way for the development of the papacy. Paul predicted it in 2 Thessalonians 2:3. And this union of church and state will occur again in the last days. The wide diversity of belief in the Protestant churches is regarded by many as decisive proof that no effort to secure forced uniformity can ever be made. But for years, there has been a growing sentiment by the churches to unite on common points of belief. Yet when this shall be done, the next step will be a movement to require compliance to the new faith by everyone, and this will lead to the use of force in order to gain it. Thus, according to Bible prophecy, when the leading churches of the United States, uniting upon points of doctrine held by them in common, shall influence the state to enforce their decrees, then Protestant America will have formed an image of the Roman hierarchy, and the infliction of civil penalties upon dissenters will inevitably result. The two-horned beast will cause men to receive the mark, and he commandeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Revelation 13:16-17. In the next chapter in Revelation, the third angel has a warning that agrees with the above warnings. If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God. Revelation 14:9-10. The beast, mentioned in this message, whose worship is enforced by the two-horned beast, is the papacy. It is the first, or leopard-like, beast of Revelation 13. The image to the beast is the religion that shall be developed when the churches shall seek the aid of the civil power for the enforcement of their doctrines. But what is the mark of the beast? After the warning against the worship of the beast and his image and his mark, the prophecy declares, "Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus." Revelation 14:12. Those who keep God's commandments are thus placed in contrast with those that worship the beast and his image and receive his mark. So the point of distinction between the two classes will be the keeping of God's law on one hand and a required refusal to keep it on the other. The special characteristic of the beast, and therefore of his image, is the breaking of God's commandments. Says Daniel of the little horn, the papacy, "He shall think to change times and the laws." Daniel 7:25. Paul called this same apostate power the man of sin, who was to try and exalt himself above God. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. 2 Thessalonians 2:3-4. These prophecies go together, for only by changing God's law could the papacy exalt itself above God. And whoever should understandingly keep the law as thus changed would be giving supreme honor to that power by which the change was made. Such an act of obedience to papal laws would be a mark of allegiance to the Pope in the place of God. In the coming crisis, the worshippers of God will be especially identified by their regard for the fourth commandment, for this is the sign of his creative power and the witness to his claim upon man's reverence and homage. But at the same time, the worshippers of the beast will be identified by their efforts to tear down the Creator's memorial, to exalt the institution of Rome, the papal holy day. It was in behalf of the White Sunday that popery first asserted its arrogant claims, and its first resort to the power of the state was to compel the observance of Sunday. The claim so often put forth that Christ changed the Sabbath is disproved by his own words, Matthew 5:17-19. Indeed, it is a fact generally admitted by Protestants that the Scriptures give no authority for the change of the Sabbath. It is clear that Roman Catholics acknowledge that the change of the Sabbath was made by their Church, and declare that Protestants, by observing the Sunday, are recognizing her power. As the sign of the authority of the Catholic Church, Papist writers cite the very act of changing the Sabbath into Sunday, which Protestants allow of, because by keeping Sunday, they acknowledge the Church's power to ordain feasts and to command them under sin. Henry Tuberville, An Abridgment of the Christian Doctrine, page 58. So then the change of the Sabbath is the sign, or mark, of the authority of the Roman Church. It is the mark of the beast. The Roman Church has not relinquished its claim to supremacy, and when the world and the Protestant churches accept a Sabbath of its creating, while rejecting the Bible Sabbath, they pay homage to the papacy. The observance of Sunday by the Protestants is an homage they pay, in spite of themselves, to the authority of the Catholic Church. Plain Talk About Protestantism, page 213. The enforcement of Sunday keeping on the part of Protestant churches is an enforcement of the worship of the papacy, of the beast. Those who, understanding the claims of the fourth commandment, choose to observe the false instead of the true Sabbath, are thereby paying homage to that power by which alone it is commanded. Letter to the Pope regarding the Sabbath. A number of years ago, a Georgia farmer sent a letter to the Pope inquiring about the Bible Sabbath. The letter was sent on to Chicago for reply. Here are both letters. Thomaston, Georgia, May 22, 1934. Pope Pius XI, Rome, Italy. Dear Sir, is the accusation true that Protestants accuse you? They say you changed the seventh-day Sabbath to the so-called Christian Sunday, identical with the first day of the week. If so, when did you make the change and by what authority? Yours very truly, signed, J.L. Day. Extension Magazine, published by the Catholic Church Extension Society of the United States of America, 180 North Wabash Avenue, Chicago. J.L. Day. Dear Sir, regarding the change from the observance of the Jewish Sabbath to the Christian Sunday, I wish to draw your attention to the facts. 1. That Protestants, who accept the Bible as the only rule of faith and religion, should by all means go back to the observance of the Sabbath. The fact that they do not, but on the contrary observe the Sunday, stultifies them in the eyes of every thinking man. 2. We Catholics do not accept the Bible as the only authority of the Church, as a rule to guide us. We say, this Church, instituted by Christ, to teach and guide man through life, has the right to change the laws of the Old Testament, and hence, we accept the change of the Sabbath to the Sunday. We frankly say, yes, the Church made this change, made this law, as she made many other laws, for instance, the Friday abstinence, the unmarried priesthood, the laws concerning mixed marriages, the regulation of Catholic marriages, and 1,000 other laws. 3. We also say that, of all Protestants, the Seventh-day Adventists are the only group that reason correctly and are consistent with their teachings. It is always somewhat laughable to see the Protestant churches, in pulpit and legislature, demand the observance of Sunday, of which there is nothing in the Bible. With best wishes, Peter R. Tramer, editor. But in the very act of enforcing a religious duty by secular power, the churches would themselves form an image to the beast. Because of this, a national enforcement of Sunday keeping in the United States would be an enforcement of the worship of the beast and his image. But Christians of past generations observed the Sunday, supposing that in so doing they were keeping the Bible Sabbath. And there are now true Christians in every church, not accepting the Roman Catholic communion, who honestly believe that Sunday is the Sabbath given by God. Heaven accepts their sincerity of purpose. But when Sunday observance shall be enforced by law, and the world shall be enlightened concerning the obligation of the true Sabbath, then whoever shall transgress the command of God, to obey a precept which has no higher authority than that of Rome, will thereby honor popery above God. He is paying homage to Rome, and to the power which enforces the institution ordained by Rome. He is worshiping the beast and his image. As men then reject the Sabbath, which God has declared to be the sign of his authority, and honor in its stead that day which Rome has chosen as the token of her supremacy, they will thereby accept the sign of allegiance to Rome. And they will receive the mark of the beast. Thus it is not until the issue is thus plainly set before the people, and they are brought to choose between the commandments of God and the commandments of men, that those who continue in transgression will receive the mark of the beast. The most fearful threat ever addressed to mortals is contained in the third angel's message of Revelation 14:9-12. That must be a terrible sin, which calls down the wrath of God, unmingled with mercy. Men are not to be left in darkness concerning this important matter. The warning against this sin is to be given to the world before the final visitation of God's judgments. Prophecy declares that the first angel will make his announcement to every nation and kindred and tongue and people. Revelation 14:6. The warning of the third angel, which forms a part of the same threefold message, is to be no less widespread. It is represented in the prophecy as being proclaimed with a loud voice by an angel flying in the midst of heaven, and it will command the attention of the world. In the issue of the contest, all Christendom will be divided into two great classes: those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus, and those who worship the beast and his image and receive his mark. Although church and state will unite their power to compel all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive the mark of the beast, Revelation 13:16. Yet the people of God will not receive it. The prophet, John, in vision, beheld them that had gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God, and singing the song of Moses and the Lamb, Revelation 15:2-3. We have seen that the issues are clear in the Bible, and they are clear in history as well. The seventh day is the Sabbath, for God never changed it. By Rome's own statement, very few people are keeping the right day holy, for only a few are keeping God's Bible Sabbath. What we are told about this is important. The Church changed the observance of the Sabbath to Sunday by right of the divine, infallible authority given to her by her founder, Jesus Christ. The Protestant, claiming the Bible to be the only guide of faith, has no warrant for observing Sunday. In this matter, the Seventh-day Adventist is the only consistent Protestant. The Catholic Universe Bulletin, August 14th, 1942, page 4. This is the official weekly newspaper of the Cleveland Catholic Diocese. Question. A. The Bible says, "The seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord," and we read in your literature that it is the only Bible Sabbath there is. Will you please explain how the Sunday observance originated? B. Do you think the Seventh-day Adventists keep the right day? Answer. If you follow the Bible alone, there can be no question that you are obliged to keep Saturday holy, since that is the day especially prescribed by Almighty God to be kept holy to the Lord. In keeping Sunday, non-Catholics are simply following the practice of the Catholic Church for 1,800 years, a tradition, and not a Bible ordinance. What we would like to know is, since they deny the authority of the Church, on what grounds can they base their faith of keeping Sunday? Those who keep Saturday, like the Seventh-day Adventists, unquestionably have them by the hip in this practice, and they cannot give them any sufficient answer which would satisfy an unprejudiced mind. With the Catholic, there is no difficulty about the matter, for since we deny that the Bible is the sole rule of faith, we can fall back upon the constant practice and tradition of the Church. Francis George Lentz, The Question Box, 1900, pages 98 to 99. Question: what Bible authority is there for changing the Sabbath from the seventh to the first day of the week? Who gave the Pope the authority to change a command of God? Answer: if the Bible is the only guide for the Christian, then the Seventh-day Adventist is right in observing the Saturday with the Jew. Is it not strange that those who make the Bible their only teacher should inconsistently follow in this matter the tradition of the Catholic Church? Bertrand Conway, The Question Box, 1903 edition, pages 254 to 255. 1915 edition, page 179. The Adventists are the only body of Christians with the Bible as their teacher who can find no warrant in its pages for the change of day from the seventh to the first. Reason and common sense demand the acceptance of one or the other of these alternatives, either Protestantism and the keeping holy of Saturday, or Catholicity and the keeping holy of Sunday. Compromise is impossible. Catholic Mirror, September 2nd and 23rd, 1893. So now we can see it clearly. The attempt of the Roman Catholic Church to change the Sabbath of the Creator to another day is the mark of her authority. It is the mark of the beast, for it decides whom you will worship. Sunday is our mark of authority. The Church is above the Bible, and this transference of Sabbath observance is proof of that fact. The Catholic Record, London, Ontario, Canada, September 1st, 1923. Prove to me from the Bible alone that I am bound to keep Sunday holy. There is no such law in the Bible. It is a law of the Holy Catholic Church alone. The Bible says, "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy." The Catholic Church says, "No. By my divine power, I abolish the Sabbath day and command you to keep holy the first day of the week." And lo, the entire civilized world bows down in reverent obedience to the command of the Holy Catholic Church. Priest Thomas Enright, CSSR, president of Redemptorist College, Kansas City, Missouri, in a lecture at Hartford, Kansas, February 18, 1884, and printed in the Hartford, Kansas Weekly Call, February 22, 1884, and the American Sentinel, a New York Roman Catholic journal in June 1893, page 173. Of course, the Catholic Church claims that the change was her act, and the act is a mark of her ecclesiastical power, from the office of Cardinal Gibbons through Chancellor H.F. Thomas, November 11, 1895. Today, the Bible Sabbath is the great test of loyalty. But soon, Jesus will return for his own, and the trials of life will be a thing of the past. Do you want to be there? I believe you do. This next chapter will bring you strong encouragement.